Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Guest today, Baldo Garza. Baldo, please, first of all, tell us where you're calling in from and what you do with your brand TBG.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm actually in a town right outside of Austin, Texas, called Lago Vista, and it's out like northwest of Austin. It's on the lakeside. I never, like, my wife and I were looking for a place to move to, and just the home prices in Austin are just crazy. So we just decided, like, what if we like 30 minutes or 45 minutes? And we fell in love with this place. And then, like, honestly, it's been about a year and a half now. And I'm like, oh shit, like we're living in the lake life right now. And so not intentional, but it feels good to be out in the woods in a sense. But TBG, I mean, it basically stands for my name, the Baldo Garza, and just because it was an easy transition from like I couldn't find just like without the THE on Instagram and all that, and I just made it a brand. But actually, my wife and I both work together on it. Awesome. She does more of PR stuff, and I help with automations and podcasting is a big one for us because especially for people that are beginning to do content online or that want to start, a whole loop system, like a content loop system. It's so easy, right? To film for 30 minutes or, record for 30 minutes and get so much content out of that and repurpose it, especially now with AI tools. And so a lot of what I end up doing is, well, let's create content systems. So that way, that's the one thing we don't have to think about. And it's going to generate some views at least.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I mean, tell me a little bit more about your background. Like what kind of got you into, the space with creating like this agency this way? And just tell me a little bit more about your background. What got you interested in creating TBG?
So it's interesting because I still work with my best friend in Austin, and we have a clinic there. We have it's called the Nurse Doza Clinic, and he's a nurse practitioner and a chiropractor.
Oh, very cool.
And so I don't know. This about 8 years ago, I was actually working with Cutco Knots. I did that for like 13, 14 years, and I was a sales guy, and so everything that comes along with sales, like promoting, marketing, and I was a 1099, right? So it was like I had to learn every part of the business kind of deal. And there was a point where I was transitioning, or I didn't know I was transitioning, but there was like a time to transition to something else. I had already like moved within different roles at Cutco, became an event manager, and then like a revenue stream manager, and then back to event managers, and I was doing my own thing too. So I was kind of like stuck in this loop where like I was having fun making a lot of money, but like it wasn't for me, it wasn't like purposeful. So my best friend, he was working in pain care, and he was hating life because like when it comes to the health environment, he's like a biochemistry genius. So he can solve a lot of issues just by like visualizing what's going on chemically and then find a solution through that. And so he was like, I've never run a business before, so can you help me? And I was like, well, look, I'm in this weird spot. And I literally told him, like, if you just give me a place to sleep, which I stayed with him for the first 2-3 years, then we'll figure it out. And like, we'll share a car, like whatever we need to do, we'll figure it out. I'm kind of in a space where like, I want to do something like that and I want to take that on. And so we still have that. We also from there started a supplement company called MSW Nutrition, which you can find that on MSWnutrition.com. And then we also started a podcast. Like basically it was the same thing. Like, how can we promote? He's a great speaker. So we started doing Facebook Lives. And then that was like our first intro into podcasting. And at some point we had like an intern that we said, can you make this into like an actual podcast? And she's like, we can figure it out. And obviously it's not that difficult, but at that point when you don't know anything about it, you're like, I wonder if we can make this into a podcast. And so we did, and then that became How Do You Health, and then we actually threw a festival out of that, discontinued that. Now we have an online community through circle.so, but we actually call it the school. And so we kind of run like a school platform. We have classes, we have and so we do a lot of that. And then through all that, because we connect with so many practitioners, they are in the same phase. It's like, look, we know business. I mean, we know medicine, we know like how to practice, but we don't know anything about business. And for me, it's like, well, why don't we start with at least with the podcast? Because that'll help with marketing, and like I can help you set up. And so then that became a thing, right? And so part of it that I like to kind of advertise myself as is like a legacy, like a legacy practice, like modernization expert. So I do work with a lot of practitioners that have had a practice for quite some time now. And so they're in a phase where, should they close down because they want to retire, or like they're tired of like having to go into the clinic all day, every day kind of deal. And so in this day and age, like that doesn't mean you have to quit that, right? That means now that you can expand that. And so not that I can't work with anybody else, but like I tend to like really go that way, because then it becomes this passionate project where it's like, man, you have so much like actual clinical practice that like we need to serve the community by helping you amplify your message, because it's different than like working like with a brand new practitioner or someone that's just starting with health coaching, because it's, I mean, I guess the systems would be the same, but it's the content's different. And for me, it's like, if I'm looking at it from the user, then I want to know that like I'm also helping the user, because I'm helping them learn from like an experienced practitioner, as opposed to just like someone that's like really popular online.
So you kind of take people who already have like this like area of expertise over like, decades of time, getting kind of close to the end of their clinical practice journey, and helping them turn that into just more like general outreach to help people in the community with their expertise, and like show them how to basically like, show that on a larger scale online.
Correct. Yeah, because I think it's needed, right? Like again, like, and I've helped out a few other people. Like, hey, can you help me start a podcast? Sure, right? Like, especially whenever you're beginning a second project or a third project, or like whatever it takes to make this successful. Like, I'll take the money. But thankfully, I'm at the point where like, look, I prefer not to, because there's plenty of other opportunities. Right now I am talking to this practitioner out in San Francisco, and he's like worked in the psychedelic space, like the legal psychedelic space, for many years, right? And so he's like, I just like, obviously the clinic does great, but I have to be there all the time, and so then it's like, well, that would be not only like great content, but like it's a great opportunity, because we're like in this sense, right? Like we're transitioned into like being more accepted to like psychedelic space and all that. And so I look at someone like him, or like, there's another client of mine that he's also a pharmacist, and so he wants to be able to like leverage his knowledge for many, many years, and like create products, like digital products, so he doesn't have to go to the clinic all the time, or to the pharmacy all the time. And so and so that's and I become very, very happy about that, because that means that I'm not just helping the practitioner, but I'm also helping the the client, like the listener, the user, because if anything, like being in the health space for so long, I've noticed that like there's a lot of not only like misinformation, but there's a lot of information that's not even out there, right? Like one thing is like, oh, that's wrong. But another thing is like, well, yeah, but there's all this truth as well that like it's not even shared. And I want to empower like, someone like you or anyone that's listening to be able to like have all the different stats, like nice, good stats, and they make a decision for themselves, as opposed to just like, well, the doctor said this or that. And, you just never know what happens.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I mean, everybody needs a niche, right? No matter what you're doing. So that makes sense with your background, and just kind of where it went organically at first, just to like kind of stay in that lane, because you know what works, like how to make that work for people that are practitioners, and especially like something in the psychedelic space. I mean, it's so fascinating, and there's so much. I mean, all that's out there really about that is misinformation. I mean, everything is done like such behind closed doors. There's no real there's no real good place to find like actually good information on that. So that's I'm sure that was probably a really interesting project for you to get like just something like that off the ground with somebody who did that kind of work for so long. Yeah, so I guess what do you kind of utilize as far as, obviously I know you help people do kind of like podcasting or create content that way. It's a great way to produce content. You have a 20-30 minute conversation. You can use that for, weeks on end, right? So what other kind of services, I mean, do you offer for these practitioners in order to, help them with? I know you mentioned somebody making like digital products. What do you kind of mean by that? I'm curious.
Courses, like even just like the initial like freebie, like the little ebook kind of deal, because part of it is we'll create a content loop system, right? So like part of it is like, well, where's where's your email collection page, and like, what kind of automations do you have behind that? And so it's really interesting because sometimes I'll present, which is like any other business, like I'll present like, you should be doing all of this because it'll maximize your whole opportunity. And then it comes down to like, well, can we at least start here? And can we at least start here? And I've, hopefully I don't divulge too much, but like I like to position it in the sense where like sometimes I'll start with what they can and we'll work for 3 to 6 months with that. And then it almost seems like, well, damn, like I should add the extra, avenues, because then that'll really complete the loop. And like, you get this like flywheel of like, you just producing content and revenue and back and forth. And so it just everything just ends up working better. But like, I want to look at it from a business standpoint to be able to say, okay, well, this is also going to help already. And then to slowly be able, as we're doing that, for them to be able to slowly see like, oh, I see why I should add the automation, like the whole, the flows or how to add a freebie, or like I should just go ahead and do a course because I have this $1,000 consult offer, and I have this like little freebie, but I don't have like $100 offer or like a $200 offer. So it becomes just this like nice little process. And so one of our clients basically said like, so basically you're my like interim COO because you're coming in, creating systems and getting out. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you can look at it that way, because because at the same time, once the systems are in, it's like, you shouldn't be paying my rate, like that would just be dumb to be paying my rate. Now, if I can help you fulfill it and maybe hire people to work with you, but like, you shouldn't be paying like my time for my rate for doing those things. And I don't want to either, right? Because like, that's not fun for me. For me, it's like, I want to produce the same kind of situation for another practitioner that I trust or that I want to help out.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you kind of, and I can see that from, especially like with your demographic of like, practitioners you like to work with. Sounds like maybe a little bit older, like you mentioned, like maybe a little closer to retirement, probably a little bit more, skeptical about maybe some of these like online channels than maybe, somebody in the millennial Gen Z generation. So you kind of get in and like start small, do a proof of concept for what you're trying to talk about. And then you can kind of see organically as that starts to grow, you can see like, okay, like, well, here's this, like, and then you can also utilize this to do like these other things, and it just kind of stacks and stacks and stacks. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And because that's also how we did it. Like I'm talking about like the Nurse Doza clinic. It was like, well, what can we do? Let's at least do this, show up every day, record every single podcast. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we can easily turn this into a blog. And if it's a blog, then it should have backlinks and then SEO, and so it just became like, well, we can't do all of it because we're like bootstrapping, but we can do what we can and maximize that opportunity. And so sure, like whenever I present, here's the whole plan to someone, and it's like, $20K a month or like $30K a month. And it's like, well, I don't know if I want to do that because, I have so much funding, hopefully eventually it turns into that, because not only did we get there, but also like from the workload, but also from the revenue standpoint on their end, right? Because they're so talented and they know so much, especially clinicians that like have been practicing for so long. Like, because when you talk to a clinician that's been working for so long, it's not like, well, I think that this and that. It's like, this is what you do. It's worked for like 100 people in my past, and that's what you just got to do it, right? So there's a confidence already that when you work with someone like that, as opposed, because they have the practice, right? They have messed up so many times, but that's like in anything else.
There's a lot of conviction and proof there, I'm sure, of somebody who's been in that, lane for 20, 30 plus years. Yeah, I can definitely see that. So you basically, is it kind of always like you start with a podcast as like a content creation tool and then kind of just like take that avenue? Is that like your typical, strategy with working with these practitioners, or is it kind of just dependent on what somebody wants to do or what their like abilities are, or things like that?
It is dependent on what they want to do. The podcast just seems like, again, something that you can get a lot of content from it. It's one of those things like, hey, just show up for like 30 minutes. Or personally, I like to do something like where we're like, let's do a 12 podcast series, because then it's like Netflix things. Like people will listen to the one, but there's only 12 episodes. Then they're going to want to listen to all of it. So like, let's be very strategic with that. But maybe 20 to 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And, we create the content, and from there, we'll be able to do all the other content. But it's like, show up for 2 days for 4 hours. We'll record all of them. Like that's all you got to do. The rest of it, like I'll send you stuff for you to approve and to be like, hey, yes or no. And that's it. And so let's start there. And so, but another one that ends up happening for me a lot is just like a website landing page. Like we'll start there, because then it's easy to be like, here's your landing page. Now there's like some direction with this landing page where someone goes there. But you see how this button says that like, read my blog? there's no blog, and so, and you know how this button right here, it says like, hey, this is where I've been featured. Like, well, we don't have that yet. So let's create that. It's like, hey, these are my offerings. Like, well, we don't have offerings. Like, you want to do it? And so that's another way that it ends up. And that's kind of like an easy offer, right? Because it's like, let's say $1,000 to like a really nice optimized like landing page. So that way we at least give the viewer direction to like, here, I go here, because most of them do have something that they are doing, but it's like, but you got to maximize that, because I think back from my salesperson guy is like, I used to like close deals on the spot at events, and I was like, do you want like the small offer, the medium offer, or the large offer? And most of the time it was a medium offer, right? And so we want to give them that ease of like still feel like they're making a decision, but at the same time, not giving it overwhelming with so many different options. And so that's kind of what I try to create for people.
Yeah, that's very cool, and I really like this niche that you've kind of carved out for yourself. I think it's a really underserved area of people that like. I mean, you can probably tell just from looking at like practitioners for like professional things. Like the websites are usually not the best. Like not like a really maybe like young savvy CPG brand that's like is like all into like their SEO, into their like I'm having 100 landing pages for all the different ads they're running and all that kind of stuff. So that's very cool. And how do you kind of do your general like outreach? Like how do you like figure out like or find more clients to onboard with these types of services that you offer? You do any like cold outreaching? I know you mentioned that you do a lot of events still and stuff, but what does that kind of look like for you?
I actually don't. I've been pretty lucky about, I don't do any like just cold outreach. Generally, I don't. Most of the time, if I'm posting on Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter, then I have people reaching out for that. But most of the time at this point, it has been just referrals.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Even like my best friend, he's like my biggest fan from that sense. Like he's like, hey, I told him about you because you can help out, or the other day I had someone that was, I guess, a client from a business that said like, hey, I have a client here that has a daughter that wants to start a podcast. Like, you should talk to them. And I was like, well, I don't know what that's going to be, or if it's anything, but like, if it's something simple, like I just want to know how to start it. Like, sweet. Well, here I have a course for that. Just buy that. It's $50. Like, just like it'll tell you exactly what to do. Don't even worry. But a lot of people don't even know that, right? And obviously you can Google it and figure out how to run a podcast, but like people like that direction, right? And like usually when they buy that, it's like, hey, you can ask me any question you want on Twitter, and people just enjoy that because it's like, hey, I'm stuck here, and I just promised them like, hey, I'll get back within 48 hours. I usually look at all my tweets. It's like, oh yeah, this is where it was, and it works out. So that's an easy thing. So it's been a lot of like referrals. And I think that's basically it. Other than that, is when I'm posting things, people will comment and send someone my way, but I'm not like doing an outreach in that sense. The only outreach that I ever do is with people that I have already spoken to, that I haven't like necessarily closed a deal with, but that's just follow up.
Right. No, it's really cool. I love that. And hey, Baldo, I just want to say thank you again for coming on, man. I really appreciate your insights in this space. I don't get to do a lot of service-based interviews. Most of the people that we have come on is in more like CPG, like direct-to-consumer selling businesses. So it's a really cool conversation. I don't get to have these conversations all that often. So
sweet.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate your time and your insights. I love what you're doing, and I just want to wish you the best of luck, continued success, and yeah, look forward to staying in touch and following up with you somewhere down the line.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah.
Cool, man. Thanks, Baldo. I appreciate your time, man. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.